Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate this, and I'm so honored to be talking to all of you. So let's start off by just doing a little bit of introduction. And Samantha, why don't you kick it off? Talk to me a little bit about your political beliefs and how you identify politically and who you like politically.
Okay. I am in the middle. I'm registered independent, and I'm a teacher, and my husband is a police officer, so that kind of has formed what my opinion of politics are, as we kind of see both sides, being myself in the teachers union and him dealing in the police world. I've voted both Democratic and Republican in my time, which I won't say how long that is. And I really try to vote based on my conscience over a specific side, which I know isn't the typical way that we're, raised to kind of believe. But that's just that's my personal perspective of it.
Al, how do you identify politically?
Politically, I'm a Republican, and I go way back. There were dinosaurs running up and down 202 when I was in grade school, and I was an Eisenhower guy, so that's how far back I go. And my heart's out for anybody that fought in World War II, the greatest generation. I think Tom Brokaw wrote a book. And anyway, as you move forward, I remained a Republican. Even through, and I voted for Nixon, but then, he disgraced himself, in my opinion, and he continued to move forward. I liked Jimmy Carter as a human being, but I didn't like him as a president. But Ronald Reagan, who a lot of people didn't like, I liked, and I make no apologies for that. I think he was a very affable, and I still remember him, tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev. I still remember him and maybe he wasn't the only, my friend Monica is German, and she says, it wasn't just Reagan, it was all the Germans wanted to end and she's right. It was a situation where let's get the Cold War over with and let's move on with things. And again, you fast forward to H.W. Bush, whom I liked, and I admired his war record. W, take him or leave him. Obama, I was proud that the country would elect a black president twice, but he wasn't my favorite president, but he was okay. And now we come, and when Trump came in, I had a friend who was the head of an insurance company, and he told me long before Trump ever ran for any office, the guy's a loser, and he's a big mouth, and he said I wouldn't vote for him if he was the last person on earth, and that was 2002 or something, long before he ever ran for president. And so when I stepped into the booth, I had a choice between Trump, whom I was warned was a real loser. This was before he really showed his true colors, which were not pretty, or Hillary Clinton, and I'm not a big Clinton fan. And so I took my little grandson into the booth with me, and they closed the curtain. And I said, "Oh, he pulled that lever," and he pulled the lever for Trump. And then my son, who's like a real liberal, says, "You didn't vote for Trump, did you?" I said, "No, I didn't vote for Trump." "Oh, we did, and then, here we are in 2023. I think Biden, I really think senility is starting to creep in, and it pains me to think of him as being president for 4 more years. I despise Trump, and I'm a Republican, and I despise Trump.
Who did you vote for in 2020, Al?
I voted for Biden.
Okay.
You were your grandson.
Exactly.
No, he got smart. He got older and smarter, and so he wouldn't go to the polling place with me.
And Samantha, just to be clear, you voted for Trump both times.
I did, yes.
And Democrat before that.
And before that, all Democrat, yes.
Okay. Michael, how about you? How do you identify politically?
I'm finding that a thornier and thornier question. I'm a registered Republican. I've traditionally voted pretty straight Republican until the last 6 years, and now I'm definitely finding myself splitting the ticket constantly and identifying much more moderate. the things that attracted me to kind of when I developed what my own ideology was around fiscal conservatism, smaller government, personal freedom, personal responsibility. I still believe those are key for the fiber of the people we should be electing. I'm just not seeing that. It's so hard to find nowadays. It's kind of put me into a ideological crisis, I guess, and I'm very much considering going to registering as a Democrat now. Very close to that.
For the first time in your
First
adult
time in my
life.
life.
Just to be clear, who did you vote for in 2020 and 2016?
In 2020, I voted for Biden. In 2016, I voted for Trump.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
And Michael, how about you? How do you identify politically? And do you feel some of this same frustration and sadness and fear?
Yeah, so I'm a registered Democrat, but on the surveys, when they ask you, are you a strong Democrat? I have to admit that I'm not a strong Democrat. There has been times where locally I would support the incumbent conservative candidate. And I like to think that a person's affiliation does not actually define a human. So I like to look at what the person stands for. And then I am a big fan of that person being a role model, right? When I was in school, you would look at a position and you can say to the young people, you can be like that person or you can be like this person. So, you know, I'm interested in learning more about what the person stands for. You know, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? And I am sad, too, that this disarray has taken place because I've been working in higher ed since 2008. And young people will get turned off when they see that there's dysfunction and they will not participate in something that's so critical that we all need to participate as it's our public duty. So I am sad and I'm hopeful.
So we're going to delve into all of these big topics that you all brought up, and I'm so glad that you did. And I just want to start with this idea. If we look at the current polling right now, it seems like it is very possible there will be a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump. How many of you, and just raise your hands, are excited by a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump? No hands. No one's excited by that rematch.
Depressed is a better word.
Yeah.
Depressed, why?
Again, I think Biden is approaching senility, if not already in the middle of senility, and running the greatest country in the world, in my humble opinion, is not a job for an old senile person. And Trump is, forgive my French, an asshole. And we don't need that kind of person running our country. And so I look and who is the electorate that is voting for Trump? He's like 50. Who the hell is voting for him? Are they Southern rednecks, or who the hell is voting for him that makes him seem so popular? He doesn't even show up at the debates. I don't have an answer. It's a rhetorical question, but
If there is a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump, do any of you know who you would vote for? How many of you are undecided in this moment? How many of you vote you're undecided in a rematch?
I would be undecided.
Why are you undecided?
I did vote Republican, I didn't love, it was a lot of chaos. I'm someone who preaches kindness, and, maybe it was hypocritical for me to vote Trump in the last election, but, I kind of didn't, it was one of those, I'm not sure who to vote for in the end, and it was kind of like with your decision, you went in and just kind of let your grandson pick. That's how I kind of felt in the last election.
Election, I voted for Biden.
That's how
with good feelings.
Yeah.
But because he was the less of the two evils.
And that's kind of how. And so for the next election, to have both of them going back up against each other, I don't know if my moral compass could choose one of them.
Do you know who you would vote for if there were a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump?
I feel pretty confident that I know. I am confident that I know.
You would vote for President Biden?
And it would sort of like Al mentioned, it would not be a happy or proud vote. It would be the lesser of the two evils. What's important to me as a person who works in higher ed is that I can say to students, do you want to be like this person when you grow up? And I just feel like absolutely 100% cannot say that about Donald Trump.
Scott, do you know who you would vote for?
If Biden versus Trump, yes, I'd vote for Biden, for sure.
And would you do so with enthusiasm?
No.
Why?
I, like Alex, share concerns about age. It's just a fact. I think he is still capable. He seems to have the vitality to continue to do the job well, but at 88 years old, just the inherent risk. I just feel that Trump has disqualified himself from office because of his behavior from the election through January 6th onward, and would never vote for him.
What about that January 6th, Samantha, when you hear Scott talk about the fact that he feels like January 6th has disqualified former President Trump? How do you feel about that?
I think there was a lot of things that, came after that really changed, again, like I said, like the moral compass of I can't, with good faith, go out and vote for someone who is leading the country in that sense. But to the, other side, Biden is, I don't feel very, aware of what we need either. I just don't think either candidate really will serve our country in the way that we need it to.
What concerns you all more, President Biden's age or former President Trump's legal problems, Al?
I am so down on Trump and his behavior and his mouth that Biden could be dead and I'd still vote for him. And I am not a Democrat. And I can find fault with Biden, but Trump is so overwhelmingly vile in my eyes that, like I say, if Biden suddenly died, I would still vote for him over Trump.
You say he's overwhelmingly vile because of his actions, because of January 6th?
January 6th is an interesting problem. They like to call it an insurrection, and they've jailed a number of people, and Tucker Carlson, who was probably the #1 commentator on Fox, and you can like or dislike Tucker Carlson, but he basically got fired, in my opinion, because he got a hold of those tapes and just showed the good parts of the insurrection, people walking through the Capitol and the guy with the horns on, and being escorted by the guards. And he kept saying, what are they talking about? And somebody broke a window. Okay. So I didn't know where to land on January 6th. I didn't know whether it was a hideous, vile insurrection that was prompted by Trump or whether it was overblown by the Democrats. And I honestly don't know. I'm still in a dilemma. The only thing I'm not in a dilemma on is Trump is a big mouth moron and should not be running any country. And a lot of, I won't say a lot, but a number of his policies I liked. Mm-hmm. But him, I didn't. There's a certain amount of decorum that a chief executive officer needs to have. He doesn't have it. And he's a disgrace and an embarrassment.
Not to put, I don't want to to your point, when I say January 6th, I certainly mean all of the actions that occurred leading up to and afterwards, the slate of fake electors, the going into Coffee County, Georgia, all of the things that we've seen. I mean, I did watch all of the January 6th hearings, and from that, I can't.
And you say you're leaning toward voting for President Biden. How much is his capacity to serve a concern for you?
It's a concern, but I don't believe that his age is an existential threat to our democratic society like Trump's intended behavior of retribution that he's clearly stated for the record, that I think would be extremely.
Where are the leaders, though? I mean, who do the Democrats have to offer? Kamala Harris, who I think is not good at all, in my opinion. Trump, who's over 80 and will be way too old, I think. Where are they all?
I totally agree with you. If there was a choice, if it wasn't a binary choice, if you could say, pick your candidate for the Democrats, like a Gretchen Whitmer, perhaps, that would make my decision very easy.
Michael, weigh in on this point. How concerned are you about President Biden? Because you're saying you're leaning toward voting for President Biden at this point. How concerned are you about his age, his capacity to serve?
Honestly, I think a person in that age group should be spending more time with their family and enjoying these years. You work so hard. You've been in Senate since 79-ish. At some point, I hope I don't have to work that long, I would want to spend some time with my family. So in the perfect world, that's what I would really like this guy to be doing. But at the same time, I have a mentality that whoever sits in that seat, regardless if it's a left person or a right person, I'm going to root for them to do well. because that person who's there is going to represent us, be our representation to the rest of the world. So I secretly root for him, and I'll pray for him.
Yeah. I want to explore this topic that Al has brought up a number of times. Michael, kick us off. Do you feel like there's a leadership vacuum right now?
Absolutely. I do.
Across the board?
Across the board. I think that it's chaotic, and I'm scared because I'm raising a 9-year-old, and if this is the type of stuff that she sees, it's going to make her not be a person who wants to get involved with that. So if generations continuously see this discord, they're going to say, well, why do I want to get involved with that, rather it's voting or even being a person who can make the world better?
And my guess is that your 9-year-old is the kind of person that should get involved, and I'm just...
Oh, she absolutely is. She just got her PSSA results back and did fantastic. Proud of her for sure.
And Scott, you have one of your children is interested in going into politics. Does that concern you, and do you feel like there's a leadership void?
I think there's actually, the Democrats, I think, have a bench. Not to dispute what you're saying, but clearly Biden is the leader right now. I think they have a number of other candidates that if this weren't Trump being involved and them having done the calculus of who can beat Trump, that there would have been someone else that would have been elevated. Pete Buttigieg, I mean, there's a whole bunch of names you could put out there.
We all saw what happened on Capitol Hill, the fact that Speaker McCarthy was voted out. His gavel was taken away. Samantha, what was your reaction to seeing Speaker McCarthy lose his gavel? What was the message you took from that?
I think it was, again, just like kind of everyone's saying, like chaotic. I didn't think that was something that would happen. Thought there would be a change at the last second. And it, again, shows a message of there's just so much going on that it's not very unstable.
Does it make you feel less confident in the Republican Party or in politics overall?
Politics overall, as I've kind of mentioned before, I've never been super for one or the other side. I think I was talking earlier about how I feel like politics are like a horseshoe, and the far left and far right are very close together, and I'm at the top there. So really, I feel as though from the last election prior, from COVID on, it's been very chaotic, and I feel as though, like we were saying with the leadership, where is the right leader? There has to be someone in the United States that can be doing a better job for us.
Al, how did it hit you when you saw Speaker McCarthy lose his gavel? Did it make you lose confidence in the Republican Party or in all of politics?
Well, I'll give you the one word of my emotion: depression. Because good, bad, or indifferent about McCarthy, he was working for the people in that decision, not the left, not the right, not the Republicans, not the Democrats. And this, I'll call him a moron from Florida, and I forget his name.
Gates.
Matt Gates.
Had to come forward, and I felt so badly for him because here, they call Washington the swamp and the left and the right, and here's a man who stepped forward to compromise for the people, for the soldiers whom I worship, and for whoever else was not going to get paid, all the people where their paychecks were going to be withheld. And what does he get for it? He gets the boot. I didn't understand it, and I think McCarthy's a really good man. And
Michael, what occurred to you when you saw that?
Man, I felt bad for McCarthy. I felt bad for him. I think that it's showing a lot of discord in the Republican Party, and even though I'm a registered Democrat, it's important to me that both sides can have some strength, because too much of anything is just not good. Like, I would not want the entire country to be 100% liberal, and I wouldn't want the country to be 100% conservative. So, having a balance and a structure, I think that's important. I think it's important. And seeing that just take place looks like it's going to cause some unevenness for some time.
Scott?
And I'm sorry, but I wonder and worry how Trump scores so high on these popularity. Who the hell is voting for him? Right-wing Southern people still fighting the Civil War, or who the hell's voting for him that is, I mean, I personally like Nikki Haley. I think she's smart. She's amazing. Her parents migrated from India. She became governor of, not some tiny little political office, governor of South Carolina. And so I rarely do this, but I even gave her $50 for her campaign. I constantly get email, chip in $1, $5, $100, and I just racy. And she came up, and I off my Discover card, I gave her $50 because, and I think she handles herself well in the debates.
Yeah.
I like her. Her husband, I think, is a soldier. I could be wrong there, but I think he is.
You're right.
And versus Trump, come on.
Well, I want to delve more deeply into what all of you think of the Republican candidates. But Scott, what do you make, Scott, of the chaos that we witnessed in Congress?
It was like watching a sporting event yesterday. It was, watching it go down in real time was wildly entertaining, but also to Al's point, it was depressing. I totally agree with Michael that I think this is going to sow more division, because whomever comes in and takes the role is going to be kowtowing to the 8 who voted against McCarthy, and I don't see a way that they're going to strike a compromise on key items like budget, continuing resolutions.
Given everything that you're saying, are you worried for the state of our democracy right
Yes.
now? What's your biggest fear?
In terms of what would be the biggest impact on democracy?
On our democracy.
The disregard, I'm going to try to conjugate that properly, the disregarding of constitutional norms, of behavioral norms, of decorum norms, the fact that all of that has been thrown out the window, seemingly, that just feels like it's the front of a wave that's going to get worse. My biggest concern would be that... And
I pity not my children necessarily, certainly not me. I'm passé and, well, my grandchildren. I feel for them because of where we seem to be headed.
Samantha, are you worried about the future of the country's democracy when you hear all of everyone's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I have two very young children. I have two toddlers, and, becoming a parent really changes the outlook of everything in life, and trying to think of where we're going to be in, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. I am nervous about that, I think.
Michael, how about you? Do you worry about the democracy?
Yeah, I'm worried, but I'm a faith-based person, so I feel like whatever will be, and it's just more important now than ever that people spend time with their families, that they work hard, build whatever resources you can, and be a part of it. Be a part of it. If you don't like the culture, then be a role model of the culture and try to impact it and get involved.
What do you, for each of you, as you think about this, and Scott, let me start with you on this question because you talk about the importance of fiscal conservatism. Is the economy your top issue? What's your top issue in this election?
All the economic indicators to me look good. I'm not as concerned about the economy right now. I do think that at some point we've got to coalesce on a balanced budget of some kind. It can't continue to deficit spend at the rate we are. But it's not in terms of voting this next cycle, will probably not be my number one concern.
What is your number one issue?
Wow, it's kind of hard to codify. Decorum, for lack of a better word, the willingness to treat marginalized people, LGBTQ community, Black Lives Matter, like that militant kind of hatred towards it, I don't understand. And that finding a way that our candidate that can allow growth in those communities would be key to me.
Al, what's your top issue?
It's again, I worry that we're slowly but surely moving away from the founding fathers' concepts of what this country was all about. And again, I'm a great historian. I read book after book after book on history. And you say, so what, American democracy? Read the Gettysburg Address if you want to understand a little bit about what I thought was a great man Abraham Lincoln thought about America, whether this nation or any nation so dedicated or so conceived can long endure. He was worried that it was going to go into the toilet. And here we are 120 years later, or whatever it is. I'm worried that it's going to go into the toilet.
Michael, Al's talking about his concern that the country is losing its very core and spirit. How much for you is that a top issue in this election?
It's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. I think about the community that I grew up in, and the brain is a sponge. And you, as a young person, you think the options are whatever that sponge is soaking in. And sports was something that was popular. Music was popular. And the alternatives are you can look at what your parents do, right? And they're working, hopefully, and you want to work. But when you go to school, they teach you about college. So my number one concern this upcoming cycle is the student loan debt crisis. I think of 7 years ago, I voluntarily took a pay cut to leave private higher education to go into the public because I felt bad seeing students drowned in debt with interest rates higher than an FHA mortgage in the home of the free. These people are going to school to better themselves, and if they can't afford it by their parents and they take out student loans, government-owned student loans, the interest rates are higher than what it is to buy a house. To me, that's unacceptable.
And I totally agree, because I am something that I feel very strongly about is the student debt crisis. I had to take out loans because my parents couldn't afford to pay for my college, and I still have a ton of loans because specifically of the interest rate. And I, as a teacher, have always, prior to kids, had to work 2, 3, 4 extra jobs to really just get by. And my husband and I are very lucky. My husband is a Temple graduate. I have a double major and a master's. We should we should really be, according to what the plan we learned in high school, these extremely successful financially humans. And sometimes, we, by the luck of our parents allowing us to live at home rent-free before we bought a home together, and waiting till we were older to have children, and having a mother-in-law who's retired to be able to watch our children, are the way that we are surviving, financially. And that's because student debt, I took out X amount, and it basically times 3. I mean, I have about the same amount, I have about half that I had 15 years ago.
So the economy, the indicators are getting better, but you don't feel that necessarily.
No, yeah. And we were also, I always say we were lucky to buy our house when we bought our house. I have friends who are teachers who they can't afford to buy a house because of the economy right now.
House and car, and you name it, and it all went into the college, and 50% of the colleges are offering these bogus degrees.
Right.
The ancient Chinese cave art. Okay, so what? Now where do I get a job? I want a $100,000 job. No, nobody's going to offer you a job with that kind of curriculum, and I blame a lot of that on the universities.
Who do you think is the best candidate on the economy?
I think the Biden stopping the student loan interest was super helpful for our family. I paid off a huge portion of the loans because of that. And I know a lot of my family members and friends really were helped in that sense of the payments stopping, that part. For me as a teacher, I think that democratically it's, more helpful in the situation that we are in currently.
Who do you blame for the current state of the economy?
I don't know. It's a loaded question.
It is. Al, who do you
I think
bears responsibility?
I think there's been an outrageous amount of spending on the part of the government. Not millions, not billions, trillions of dollars.
Is that both parties?
Again, do you watch Fox News? Do you watch CNN? Who do you watch? And then that's what your opinion is going to be. And what I do is I've learned to use the remote to keep changing the channel and get on Jeopardy. Which I can answer maybe 10% of the questions, but I like question and answer. And politics, I get totally confused. So I honestly can't. I'm tempted because I'm a Republican to say the Democrats have spent more money than the Republicans, but then you hear somebody, Trump spent trillions of dollars on this and that, and So I honestly can't answer,
And
but
yes,
it's out of control.
The one thing at the gym that I belong to, which was very helpful for me early on, I've been there for 10 years. I think one morning it's like 6 a.m. I'm on the treadmill and they have all these big TVs and there's always a Democratic news and always a Republican news on. And it was so eye-opening to me to see the same issues being portrayed with different headlines and different ways.
Yeah.
And that's when that really opened my eyes to say, I really need to do my research more and to figure out.
You just want the truth. Where do you find the truth?
I don't know.
It does trouble me though as I very much would like to see a balanced budget. The last president that had a balanced budget clearly was Clinton. And when the Republicans, Gates in this case, is saying we're going to shut down government to stop this wasteful spending, you had an administration that held the House and the Senate and the presidency, and you still ran a significant deficit. That bothers me to no end.
What about you, Michael?
It's tough. It's tough.
Who do you think bears the most responsibility for the state of the economy?
It's so crazy. I think that you can't point to one person or one entity. I think that when you read both, because I do that as well, I watch my CNN headlines and I watch my Fox headlines because, if I'm having a conversation with friends, family, I want to make sure that I'm being fair if we're having this type of conversation. And literally both.
You blame Democrats and Republicans for the state of the economy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You brought up the Republican primary. How closely are you all watching the Republican primary, Michael?
I'm watching it regularly. I'm a little, what's the word? I'm a little sad. That's not the best adjective. Disappointed that Donald Trump's not participating because I would love to hear how he would debate against other educated Republicans. But then I understand why he can't. He's tied up with legal trouble. So it's like, how do you find the time to...
And he's rated so much highly above all those people that debated. It's like, why should I come and defend stuff I've done that maybe you can't defend, and why should I show up? And that's one side. The other side is, well, you should because you're running for office and yakety.
Raise your hand if you think Donald Trump should appear on the debate stage. Samantha, you are someone who supported former President Trump twice. Why do you want to see him debate?
I think it's important for us to see what is he going to bring to this, because he did cause so much chaos and divide. And, I think that maybe in his mind, he might think it's like a layup against, Biden, for other people thinking that maybe he's too old to run and that he would just automatically get the votes. But how can you vote for someone that you don't really know what they're standing for? What are his important...
Al, should former President Trump show up at the debates?
I feel like he should, but I can't find a good part of him. And I feel like that's why he doesn't show up, because somebody will say, well, what about this or what about that? And he'll be in an embarrassing position of trying to defend himself, and he really won't be able to. And why should he when his poll numbers are so high? And again, I keep asking, who the hell is voting for this guy? It's not like 5%. It's like 20, 30% between him and DeSantis.
Double digits, strong
Who's
double
voting
digits.
for him?
That takes me to my next question. When we look at the polling, it shows that right now, President Biden and former President Trump are in the dead heat. So let me ask you one more time, raise your hands. Who of you would consider voting for a third-party candidate if there was one? Both of you would. No?
Can I
please
qualify from a theoretical basis? Absolutely. From a practical basis, a third-party candidate almost assuredly is going to just chip away at Joe Biden and give Trump a better chance to go in. So I couldn't do no labels or anything like that for that purpose.
Because there's been a number of pretty strong third-party candidates down through the years, and none of them have ever won. And you're right, they've chipped away from people that, okay, if I got to pick one or the other, I'm going to pick this person, and all of a sudden they lost 20% of their vote because candidate 3 is, I forget the name, I shouldn't remember the names, but I can't remember the names.
Well, this cycle, Kennedy or whomever is only going to retract Biden. So
yeah, Kennedy's interesting, but that's a whole That's for another
That's
time.
a whole different panel discussion. Samantha, you would consider voting for a third party candidate?
I mean, it depends on what their views are and what they think. Right now, I don't feel confident in either Trump or Biden. I think, like, from my perspective, I know that, politics gets so deep into, like, and more into the economy and more into this law and that. And I'm, working every day in the middle class as a teacher and my husband as a police officer. And, I want him to be safe. I want my students to get the things that they need and deserve, basic things. And I think my husband and I both talk about mental health is a huge issue in the, the U.S. and, like, who's going to fix that? I honestly, not to be like, I'm not focused on all the little things happening, but the mental health for both him and I working with the youth and adults is huge, and no one's really, like, fixing it.
And I want to follow up with you because you said something interesting, which is you felt like your husband, who's a police officer, was safer under former President Trump, but you felt like your school, you're a teacher, has benefited more,
of course,
from President Biden.
Yeah, and that was something that really, especially in the last so at the end of Obama's term, I just felt like my husband was not safe. I felt there was such a hatred towards police, and of course, there's things that should be changed. But I knew what was happening in the four walls of my home, and I didn't feel safe. So that was, that was one of my big decisions. And the same thing with the last election. I felt safe with my husband going to work. And at the end of the day, maybe it's selfish to think that way, but I want him coming home to my family. Our school, Jill Biden came to our school and gave us, a lot of money, which is great because guess what? The kids that I work with are in need of that. They have really tough lives, and that's one of the reasons that I love being there and helping in the community. And they don't have parents who are writing a check for college for them. They sometimes don't even have anyone after school to be looking after them. Sometimes when they eat, that's it. When they're in school is the only times they're eating. They have way more problems that need to be dealt with than I could ever imagine my children will have to go through. And I think, having that educational help financially is so important for me. And, that was like in the last election, just something I had to really go back and forth with. Do I want my husband to be safe, or do I want my job to be, in a different light? And I don't know what the answer is. That's,
Michael, when you look at the state of play, you did not raise your hand when I asked if you would consider a third-party candidate. Why not?
For a logical reason. I know third-party candidates don't have the resources to actually win. And I learned historically people who look like me had to go through a whole lot to be able to have that right to vote. And if that's the case, I don't want my vote to be wasted.
I do want to ask you all about one other thing that's going on in Capitol Hill, which is that the Republicans have moved forward with an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. So there's no impeachment yet. But Al, do you support this impeachment inquiry, or do you think it's a distraction?
Again, if you're listening to Fox News, you say, go for it. Let's get this clown indicted in some way, shape, or form. And all Trump's legal things are political. And I have no doubt that Hunter Biden has some real problems and issues. And I hope they nail him, because he should be made to answer for some of the things he's done.
But what about this inquiry into President Biden?
I'm less certain that what I hear on him is true, and so he gets a pass from me for the time being until and should they come forward with this, and do they have better things to do? I can't give you a good answer.
Samantha, what do you think?
And I've watched both sides in this. This is one of those, I'm like, I have no idea because of the headlines type thing. I don't think similarly that there's enough to have him impeached with this specific issue. I would say similarly. I don't.
Fox would have you believe that Hunter
I
had all these foul investments, and
Right.
the big guy was getting 10%, and it's like, so what do you believe? It's like, I just back away from it because
I think Hunter Biden, it's pretty clear he profited from his proximity to his dad and his name. It's terribly unseemly behavior. It does not seem to rise to anywhere near the standard of a legal action by Joe Biden that they should be impeaching him. I think it's a complete distraction.
Impeachment is such a serious thing. It's something you shouldn't play with. It's not acceptable unless you have a hardcore, sincere issue that you are aware of and proof and evidence. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars.
Is there any chance that any of you sit home on Election Day?
There is a chance, yeah.
What will make you come out to vote? What will be the deciding factor?
I mean, honestly, I feel if it's Biden versus Trump, I don't know if there's anything that could make me come out and vote that day, which I know is like really, it's upsetting because it's something that, is a privilege for me to have. I just don't want to have my vote count in a way of both people I don't really support wholeheartedly, is really what it comes down to. I don't think I would.
Al, is there any chance you would stay at home on Election Day?
No. I love American democracy too much that Biden and Trump, if it's a Biden and Trump race, then I would vote for Biden, even if he was dead.
No chance I'd stay home.
And I'm a Republican,
No chance I'd stay home. I've never missed an election day. I certainly am not going to start this cycle around.
Any chance you'd stay at home?
No way. My daughter needs to see me go in there and pull that lever every time so that she knows to do it when it's her turn.
Yes.
Al, I wanted to ask you something, and I apologize I failed to do so earlier, but you are basically describing yourself as a Reagan Republican. Is there anyone you see right now, any candidate who fits into the mold of a Reagan Republican?
I like Nikki Haley. I really do. And
you think she stands a chance against former President Trump?
No. If it's up to me, which it's not, she would be the candidate. She's like 5 or 6 or 7%. I think she moved up a couple percentage points, but she's still way behind Trump. I find her intelligent. I find her an amazing history of immigrant parents rising from, an Indian baby to governor of South Carolina. She didn't have some, head secretary of some. She was governor of South Carolina. Yeah. This is a woman that knows how to move up the ladder and take charge, and I think she'd be a wonderful president.
Let me just go around the horn on a couple of the big issues that are making headlines. The issue of abortion. Where do you stand on this issue, if you would share it? And does President Biden, who you've said you'll likely support, does he represent where you stand on abortion?
My sincere stance on that is that as a guy who cannot do the miracle that you wonderful ladies can do, I should have no opinion on it at all.
What is your opinion on your view on abortion?
Well, like Biden, I was raised Catholic, and my personal views shouldn't be the law of the land. And Roe v. Wade settled the law of the land a long time ago, and it's confusing to me why we're revisiting that.
Al, what are your views on abortion?
When I was much, much, much younger, there were only like pterodactyls running up and down the road. I was for abortion. And then we had a whoops. Our third child was a whoops. And now it's personal. And they took sonograms. And here's this little tiny baby with a little tiny hands. And it's like, no. And so I did a 180 flip. And I've been that way ever since. And I'm not the kind of person who would stand outside of a clinic and picket and make a big fuss. But I do think abortion, and I understand why a lot of people, they're not ready for kids. It's going to mess their life up. They're only 18 years old, and I understand all the issues. But I'm sorry, it's murder, and I'm against it.
I am pro-choice. I think, and especially, I'm kind of the opposite of you, becoming a mom. There's so much that falls under what an abortion actually is, in the medical sense of if someone needs to terminate their pregnancy at, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 20 weeks, even after that. It's already so terrible for a mother to have to make that choice, and then to have it kind of like even worded that way, and it's just terrible. And then also being a high school teacher, I mean, the kids, they're not ready, and I support their decision if you're not ready for that.
Samantha, you are a teacher. I wonder how you feel about some of these debates that are going on, including here in Bucks County, about what kids are taught, what happens in the classroom.
So I obviously am teaching in New Jersey, but we had a whole curriculum revamp. I am very much for. I'm very open. Any of my students, they know they can come and speak to me about whatever it is that they want. And I think that sometimes parents are quick to, they see certain buzzwords and that's not what is happening in the reality of it. Of course, if I have to when I teach sex ed, I'm teaching all parts of what, we teach like the gender unicorn. It's like who you think what you identify as, what you prefer, how lots of different, what your biological self is. And, I just think it's helpful for kids to feel as though they're not alone. And I don't think that, I think, again, going back to the mental health, it's something that if there is issues in the home where, maybe your child is leaning towards certain decisions and they don't have anyone to go to, so why not bring the family together and work on how you can get through this rather than making these kids suffer and it affecting their mental health and not having the support.
Everyone's nodding in agreement.
Yeah.
Demonizing
Yeah.
is insane.
Okay. I want to just go around and if you could have one message, if you could talk to the next leader of this country, the next president, what would your message be?
My message would be to try your best and don't allow your party to define the kind of human being you are. Al mentioned Brian Fitzpatrick earlier today. I listen to him, I follow him a lot, and I love the fact that he doesn't just go with the status quo all the time. And I'm a registered Democrat, and it's not uncommon for me to hit the lever on the local conservative folks in my area for things like that. And I think that's something that is tough to do because if you don't lean and go 100% with your party, it can impact your funding sources, right? That's no fun. So the next candidate, I would tell to don't let that happen. Be yourself. Remember why you're in office, and remember that you have a bunch of your students and a lot of other young Americans looking at you as a role model. Your role model.
Scott, what's your message to the next president?
Compromise and decorum are not bad things, and please get back to that.
Al?
Get a copy of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and let's get back to the method of thinking and acting and governing, and stop making everything political, left and right, and moving away from what this country was founded on. And you might say, but at that time, 1776, whatever date you want to pick, the world was ruled by dictators and kings, and the idea that a person could have a say in the government, it's amazing, it's wonderful, and I want to see us return to that and stop making things political, left and right, and all that other business.
What's your message to the next president?
Think in the middle. See both sides. I hope that whoever is the next president can help pave the way for my children to feel comfortable and confident in living in the United States. I mean, this is, this is where we are living. We're never moving out of this country, and to have it safe and supportive in both ways. As I mentioned before, with my husband, having him feel safe, but also, you know, on the other side of it, having our kids feel supported, and that there's someone there. And again, back to it's not the savvy way of, but just mental health is, please focus on it, please.
You have all spoken so personally and so powerfully, so thank you so much. Is there anything I didn't ask that you want to share? Anything I missed?
Obviously, being a mother is maternal health, the child care crisis, maternity leave. That was something that, you know, I, working in New Jersey, got 12 weeks of paid maternity leave, which, you know, people might think is a long time, but if you know, it's not. My sister and I had our kids 2 weeks apart. She works in Pennsylvania, no paid maternity leave. So she got from her company, like, no state paid maternity leave, which is something that I will never get that time back with my kids. You know, if I had to go back to work, they're the best times, you know, watching them grow. I think the whole country needs to get on board. I don't care what candidate that is. Both sides need to. And then the child care payment, you know, women are having to choose, do you want to go to work or do you want to have children? Do you want to stay home with your children? As I mentioned, like, we are surviving because my husband's parents are retired. And they're watching our children. But if we had to send them to daycare, we'd have to really make a decision. We wouldn't, I mean, it's so expensive. People are paying mortgages to send their kids to daycare, which is, you know, disheartening. So if a candidate could help with that, please, I'll vote for you.
It's a point that I think so many people, so many families care about.
Right.
So I really appreciate your raising
Yes.
that. Thank you all
Thank you.
very much. This
Thank
is
you.
incredible.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.